In the quiet suburbs of Pennsylvania, where every lawn is perfectly manicured and every neighbor smiles over the fence, a monster lived behind a white picket door. Inside the Miller residence, the air didn't feel like home. It felt like a vacuum, sucking the oxygen out of anyone who dared to breathe too loudly. Martha stood in the kitchen, her hands trembling as she clutched a damp apron. In the living room, her daughter Sarah was curled into a ball on the floor. Standing over her was David, the man the town called a charity pillar, a perfect husband. But to Martha, he was the wolf who had finally been cornered. I saw the bruise on her ribs last summer. She told me she tripped. I wanted to believe her, but a mother's heart doesn't listen to lies. It listens to the silence in between the words. Today, we tell the story of Martha Higgins, a woman who realized that if she couldn't pull her daughter out of hell, she would have to walk into the fire herself. This isn't just a story of tragedy. It is a record of a mother's ultimate calculated sacrifice. It was a Tuesday in October. Martha was a regular at the local flea market, selling her handmade preserves. The rain was relentless, much like the dread pooling in her stomach. Sarah hadn't answered her calls for 3 days. She's just busy with the gala, I told myself. David's firm is doing so well. But Martha knew David. He was charming, yes. He was handsome. He was the kind of man who bought Sarah jewelry after every accident. But Martha had found something. While helping Sarah with the laundry a week prior, a small crumpled piece of thermal paper had fallen out of Sarah's coat pocket. It wasn't a grocery list. It was a discharge summary from an ER 2 towns over. Patient, Sarah Miller. Diagnosis, grade 2 rib fracture, blunt force trauma to the thoracic wall, signs of repetitive soft tissue injury. Martha's world tilted. The fall down the stairs, Sarah mentioned. The ER doctor's notes suggested something much more rhythmic, much more intentional. I looked at that paper until the ink blurred with my tears. My little girl, the baby I held in my arms, whose first steps I cheered for. She was being broken by the man who promised to cherish her. Martha didn't call the police. Not yet. She knew how these men worked. David had connections. He had the money. If she missed, he would kill Sarah. She needed a plan. She needed to be a witness. Martha arrived at the Millers' sprawling colonial house without a warning. She used a classic excuse. The mold in my basement is acting up, and the contractors say I can't stay there for a month. I hope you don't mind a guest. Of course, Martha. Family is everything. Stay as long as you need. The first few days were a chilling game of chess. David was the master of intimate terrorism. He didn't hit Sarah in front of Martha. Instead, he used psychological scalpels. Sarah, darling, did you forget to hydrate? You look so haggard lately. Maybe that's why your mother is worried. Every time David moved toward Sarah, Martha was there. If he followed Sarah into the kitchen, Martha would suddenly need help with the dishes. If he tried to pull Sarah into the bedroom for a private talk, Martha would ask for help with her medication. She became a human shield, a 65-year-old woman standing between a predator and his prey. But Martha could see David's patience thinning. He wasn't used to being watched. He was a king in his castle, and Martha was a spy in his court. By the second week, the mask was slipping. David stopped pretending to be the perfect son-in-law when Sarah wasn't in the room. You think you're clever, don't you? You think you can stay here forever? This is my house. She is my wife. You're just a guest who's overstayed her welcome. I'm not leaving without my daughter, David. Then you might leave in a box. Most people would have run. But Martha, she started carrying her phone in her apron pocket at all times. She practiced hitting the record button without looking. She was documenting the verbal abuse, the threats, the breaking of glasses. One evening, David caught Sarah trying to call a lawyer. He grabbed her hair, pulling her head back. Before he could strike, Martha stepped in, holding a kitchen knife, not pointing it at him, but simply dicing onions with a terrifying calmness. David, these onions are so sharp. They make my eyes water. Just like seeing you touch my daughter makes my heart bleed. Let her go. David let go, but the look in his eyes was one of pure, unadulterated malice. He realized that to get to Sarah, he had to eliminate the obstacle. He had to eliminate Martha. Friday night. David came home smelling of bourbon and failure. He had lost a major account at work, and he needed a victim. Where is she? He charged toward the stairs, but Martha was already there, blocking the path to Sarah's room. Sarah had locked herself in, weeping, begging her mother to just run. Mom, please, just go. He's going to kill you. Not today, baby, not today. David didn't hold back. He swung a heavy fist, connecting with Martha's jaw. She fell, her head hitting the hardwood floor with a sickening thud. But she didn't scream. She reached into her apron, her fingers finding the device. Click. For the next 10 minutes, the Miller house was a chamber of horrors. David used his boots. He used his belt. He screamed every vile thought he had ever had about Sarah, about Martha, about his own God complex. I own this family. You're nothing. I'll bury you in the backyard and no one will ever find the pieces. Martha felt her ribs snap. She felt her vision blurring. But through the pain, she felt a strange sense of victory. He's saying it all, she thought. He's confessing to everything. In his final act of rage, David grabbed a heavy bronze statue from the hallway table. He raised it high. Martha looked up at him and smiled through the blood. Go ahead. Show the world who you really are. The blow was fatal. Martha Higgins died on that floor, but as her hand went limp, the phone remained tucked safely under her body, protected by her weight, still recording. When the police arrived, they found a scene out of a nightmare. David was sitting on the sofa, calmly sipping water, telling the officers that his mother-in-law had fallen down the stairs and he had tried to save her. She was old, clumsy. It's a tragedy. Sarah came out of the room, clutching the phone she had retrieved from her mother's cold hand. She didn't say a word. She just pressed play. The lead detective, a man who had seen 20 years of homicides, had to leave the room. The recording was so brutal, so undeniable, that David's high-priced lawyers couldn't find a single loophole. The trial was the most watched event in the county's history. David tried to plead temporary insanity. He tried to say he was provoked, but then the prosecution brought out the physical evidence, Martha's apron. It was soaked in blood, but inside the pocket was a small handwritten note Martha had written to Sarah just in case she didn't make it. Sarah, my sunshine, I am not leaving you. I am becoming the evidence you need to be free. Don't cry for me. Live for me. Be the woman I know you are. The monster is back in his cage. You are safe now. The jury took less than 2 hours. David Miller was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Today, Sarah Miller doesn't live in that big colonial house. She sold it and used every penny to start Martha's Shield. a non-profit organization that provides legal and physical protection for women in abusive relationships. Every time Sarah helps a woman escape, she feels her mother's hand on her shoulder. We often think of heroes as people in capes or uniforms, but sometimes a hero is just a mother in a stained apron who loved her child enough to walk into the dark so her daughter could find the light. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please know that you are not alone. There are resources available. Justice was served for Martha, but the real victory is Sarah's freedom. Thank you for listening to Life Once. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of the power of a mother's love, please subscribe and share this video. Your engagement helps us bring these stories to light. Until next time, stay safe and look out for each other.